everyone. I'm Brett Marshall, the sports editor of the Garden City Telegram.
And I'm Levi Burnfin, the sports reporter of the Telegram.
Welcome to Sportswire, version 2016. It's going to be a weekly talk show that focuses on high school sports in southwest Kansas and also on Garden City Community College. So here we go. Well, Levi, you already got started with your football season,
That's
so
right.
I'm going to put you on the spot. Even though we're going out of order a little bit, we might as well make some changes right now. What about those Broncbusters at Ellsworth, Iowa? Wow.
Well, actually, I'm going to put you on the spot first. I got a question for you.
Oh, gosh. Here we go.
How many more rushing attempts by running backs did the Garden City Community College Broncbusters have last year than they did in one game, their opener this year?
I couldn't tell you. I just remember that they hardly ever rushed the ball last year. So did they have more than the whole season?
They had one less than the entire season last year. They had 46 rushing attempts by a running back last season. They had 45 this year, this year already in their one game, and that win against Ellsworth already.
So what the heck? I mean, what has Jeff Sims and the Busters come up with this year that is so different from a year ago?
Well, last year, as we know, the offensive line was young, small. They didn't have a ton of experience up front, so they really went to a full spread, no running back game. They had what they called a sniffer running back in the backfield, which is kind of like an H-back, helped block more than he did do anything else. So this year, they went to Jeff Sims' bread and butter. He likes to run pro-style offenses. He brought in offense coordinator Steve Shimko that liked pro. He was a quarterback at Rutgers. That's what they ran. So on Saturday against Ellsworth, a 30-7 win, they ran the ball.
So who are the big bodies up front now?
Well, they got 4 of the 5 guys back. Arlington Hambright's their left tackle. He's got a lot of offers. He's probably their best offensive lineman. But they also have 3 in-state guys. Nathan Hale moved back and forth between offensive line and defensive line last year.
And he's a Hutch kid.
He's a Hutch kid, exactly. And so that's really big for them to have that guy in there. They only have one freshman up front now. And Trey Minner in the backfield really got a lot of the carries last week, 28 carries for 140 some yards.
So where's he from and how big is he and is he a speed burner?
He's kind of a little mix of both, a little bit of speed, a little bit of power. It's kind of a 3-headed attack back there, but he really led the way last week against Ellsworth. And
by all stretches, their defense just dominated Ellsworth like crazy.
Absolutely, Ellsworth only had 8 first downs all game, so that's the only stat you really need to post.
Pretty insane stuff.
Yeah, it was really good, really good. This week though, we're opening up everything. Everything's getting started. NCAA college football, high school's getting started on Friday, which is your bread and butter.
Yeah, it just seems like yesterday in some ways that Garden City's season came to an awfully disappointing season in 2015, losing the Hatchet game at home to Dodge City, cost them a trip to the playoffs, second year in a row. So the 2016 version, lots to prove. And big target on their back. Everybody in the state, I was looking earlier today, K-Preps, Varsity Kansas, Ketchick, Kansas, the Hutchinson News, all has Garden City's Buffaloes ranked in the top 5 or mentioned like in the 6th or 7th spot in Class 6A.
Yeah, they even made the front of a magazine.
Even made the front of a magazine. Here come the Buffaloes, is what it said. So lots of pressure probably, a lot of expectations. I thought Coach Hill put it in really good perspective the other day, though. We haven't won a game yet. They haven't proven anything that they deserve all of these laurels that are coming their way.
Yes.
But the talent's there.
And I understand that from a coach. I understand his viewpoint. He wants his kids to make sure they're focusing on one game at a time. But then again, you have a lot of returners coming back. You got your returning quarterback. You got a returning linebacker in Zeke Carrera that can anchor that defense. In my viewpoint, I understand why there's some pressure there.
You've got Peyton Hill, who's really coach's son, going to play more offense this year than he even did last year. He's going to be in the running back position, not the fullback position. I expect to see him get a good chunk of the carries. They've got Jack Kane as the other running back. He's a junior. Nobody's really didn't have much varsity play last year, so he's kind of come up from the JV.
Well, that's their biggest thing is Jared Coster last year was so good, so speedy. That's their biggest weakness coming in this year, or even a question mark, I'd say, whether they're going to be able to replace that production.
Well, I don't know if you replace the kind of runner that Jared was, because he was the breakaway runner.
Yeah.
I mean, you get him to the corner, and if he gets by the linebackers, he's probably gone. So I don't think you replace that. You just kind of have to move things around. Coach Hill hopes to throw the ball a little bit more, get more of the receivers involved. If I had one observation, that's the thing that I hope that they'll do a better job of, is moving the ball around and getting more receivers involved, because they've got some good receivers and some talented kids.
Well, and speaking of Jesse Nunez, is the returning starter there, a quarterback. But they also have another senior coming in, transfer from Dodge City, Mason Winter, who looked good in the practices I saw. It looks like those two, whoever they give the ball to on offense, those two will be in good hands.
Well, Jesse is a dual threat, more of a running threat. That's just his best attribute. He had more yards rushing last year than Coster did. Rushed for just a little over 900 yards.
That's something I remember.
And passed for 800 and some yards too. So he had about 1,700 to 1,800 yards of total offense last year. So he can produce, but just in a different way. Mason Winter, he's the true pure form drop back passer who can throw the ball around, find his receivers. He's 6'3", Jesse's 5'9". So, they have their strengths. And so it'll be interesting to see as the season moves along how Coach Hill moves them in and out. Maybe certain situations they're going to find that they might have a need for one or the other, depending on what where the game's at.
Yeah, I think having Mason Winter, if let's say they fall behind, they need to throw to score. Maybe you bring Mason Winter in and you go full spread. And if you don't have that threat to run, maybe Jesse's not as effective, and Mason can come in and do something.
Well, it's certainly a possibility, and I know that Mason's worked his tail off in the summer months, getting acclimated to the new system. Moving over from Dodge City. I think he's really tried to fit in and find his niche, and I think somewhere along the way, he's going to find his niche, and I think it's a bonus to Garden City that they have a really good two quarterbacks that either one of them can play.
Well, we're going to figure out as the season goes on who's the quarterback going to be there. We're also going to figure out who the quarterback is going to be in some of the area schools. Okay, maybe we have a question first. Let's bring it on first.
We have John, who asks, will they miss Nayland Rakonis on the defense? I thought he was a really nice linebacker last year.
Absolutely.
Nayland was a very good linebacker, senior leadership, very strong, moved around really well.
Their linebacker core was their biggest strength of the entire team last year, I thought.
It was, and they lost the last two games of the season, and Nayland was injured in the Wichita Northwest game and did not play in the Dodge City game. So you can take that any way you want, but they certainly missed him at the tail end of the season.
Absolutely. I think that's something they need to do.
So I think that Rico Cherico's the new guy on the block.
Hey,
he came along and played at the tail end of the season, and
hey Rico,
and he's going to be a lot better than he was too. But Zeke Herrera is the linebacker.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he is the main cog on that defense.
And just a quick note on Zeke, he's the best kid. He's always smiling. I interviewed him the other day. He's the type of guy you want leading your defense because there's not a down moment for him. He is always hyped. He's always ready to go. So I think he's the guy.
He's up, and he's also the place kicker, and hopefully, he'll have as good a season as he had overall last year. He's got a strong leg. If they need a field goal, he's probably can kick it in the 40, 45-yard field goal range.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
what Wichita East brings to town, though, this year, because it's the second year for Coach Bill Kaufman. Frank Bean, who everybody around here knows Coach Bean. Brady, his son, played at the high school, played at the college. Frank coached both at the community college and at the high school here. He's now one of the defensive coaches at Wichita East.
Oh, okay.
So Coach Hill and them probably are trying to figure out how to outsmart the old codger coach, Coach Bean. So we'll see how that maps out. But it's an interesting season opener for sure.
And we'll discuss that matchup a little bit more as well later in the broadcast. For now, let's get back to Holcomb, who they have the unenviable job of trying to replace Trey Teeter. Obviously led them to a state championship last year at the quarterback. What does Holcomb look like this season coming into the year?
Well, it looks like they've got about 6 or 7 starters on each side of the ball. So will they miss Trey Teeter? You miss a kid who threw for 7,500 yards and 90 touchdowns, obviously.
Yeah.
It's like Jared Coster. I mean, you're missing the guy that ran the offense. So But they've got Trey Gilbert, and he's a junior this year, and he's had 2 years of understudy. And I think he's ready to step in, and he's a different kind of quarterback. He's more of a running quarterback.
Okay.
He's a sprint out type of quarterback, so I think you'll see Holcomb do a little bit different stuff on offense. And of course, then they've got Dylan Williams, another one of the good linebackers in the area, but also a pretty darn good running back too.
Yeah.
So
they might be leaning on him pretty heavily to begin the season, especially.
lots of experience. They've got Reese and Andrew Morse, though, transfers in from Great Bend. Those two brothers, one's a sophomore, one's a junior. Reese is going to be on the offensive line. Andrew's going to be one of the wideouts. They got Brandon Stegman. They've got Connor Van Cleve. They got about 3 or 4 starters back on the offensive and defensive line. I think across the board, they've got enough people, to really make a run later in the year too, just like they have the last couple of years. The real question is, you've got the Great West Athletic Conference: Ulysses, Scott City, Holcomb, Hugoton.
Yeah.
People better not forget about Hugoton, because they gave Andale everything they wanted in the second round of the playoffs last year, and almost beat them, lost in overtime.
That league is as good as any of that. That size of schools is as good as any in the state.
Yep. And it's almost exclusively now a 4A league, because Scott City's moved up to 4A Division II. They're in a different district than Holcomb and Hugoton. So the possibility of postseason seeing a team a second time around within your own league certainly looms down the road for them.
Absolutely.
And they all play each other within the first month of the season. So by the early week of October, we're going to know who's leading the way in the GWAC, but we're also going to know kind of where 4A Division II is at strength-wise, in western Kansas.
Right. Well, while Holcomb has to replace the quarterback, Scott City has to replace their everything for the past decade, and their head coach now. He's gone. Now they bring in Jim Turner. I should mention Glenn O'Neill. As if you don't know, you should know. He's gone. Jim Turner comes
Coach
in.
O'Neill's in Eastern Kansas in Topeka. He's in the state capital.
Yeah. So Scott City, what can you reasonably expect with kind of returning things over with a new head coach?
Well, the one thing about it, it's a new head coach, but it's not a new coach to Scott City.
I think that's key.
Coach Turner's been there 22 years. He's been the defensive coordinator the entire time that Glenn O'Neill was the head coach. He's got Brian Gentry, who's been kind of like the quarterback's receiver coach, who's probably going to be the offensive coordinator for him this year. So the transition has actually been pretty smooth. They're going to run the same wing T offense. They're going to run the same 4-4 defense.
I bet the other schools in the conference are happy to hear about that.
Oh, I'm sure they are. The one thing that was so impressive about Glenn O'Neill was his game preparation,
Absolutely.
Scouting. I'm sure those other coaches have absorbed like a sponge everything that they could from Glenn. When you go 97-14 in 9 years, make the quarterfinals 7 out of 9 years in Class 3A. The consistency level at such a high level was just almost off the chart. At least I've not seen anything like that.
They didn't have it
Western
down
Kansas.
here. They didn't have it. They were just up there all the time, and it's very impressive.
Well, he lost 2 regular season football games in his last 8 years. So
is that good? I feel like that's good. It's probably very good.
The coaches were very gracious whenever Glenn announced that he was leaving to go to Topeka C, but I think they were probably silently cheering up and down too. But I wouldn't take anything lightly about Scott City. They've got great tradition, and Coach Turner intends, I think, to carry it along, to the best that he can. And he's got a good core group of players back too. So it'll be interesting to see how the big three in the GWAC match up.
Well,
and Holcomb and Hugoton makes it maybe the Fab Four this year.
Well, you mentioned one. New faces just kind of be the theme this year. Ian Rudzik's gone off to K-State. He was everything for Ulysses last year. How do you replace that? You can't, right?
Well, I don't think you can. How do you replace, about 7,000 yards of rushing and again 90-plus touchdown scoring, and then he was as good a linebacker, as we had in the area. And we were blessed in this area with linebackers. Yeah. You've got Dylan Williams still here. You had Cooper Griffith at Scott City, who's now at Fort Hays State. Ian's at K-State. You had Trey Teeter at quarterback. I mean, we probably went through a 2 or 3 or 4 year period where we had some of the best football players this area has had in the last decade. So the football fans, I think, they had a real treat. And I hope they really appreciate what the area provided, for them. And we had some state championships. Scott City in 2012, Holcomb in 2015. So it's been a pretty good run, for football in the area.
Yeah.
Ingalls has been pretty good at the 8-man level. They've got a new coach coming in this year.
That's right. Yep.
We lost some good coaches at the small level schools, and so we've got 8 new coaches out of the 18 schools in our readership area. So it's going to be interesting to see how those all new systems, work out and who kind of steps up during the regular season.
Well, that brings us to our final little segment here. Pick 6 each week this year. We're going to pick 6 games, a couple high school, a couple college level games, NCAA, NJCAA, maybe some pro once that gets started as well next week. So this week, we're going to start off with Garden City High School and Wichita East. You mentioned it a little bit earlier. That's obviously a big game for both schools. Open the season is very important to get that win, so let's pick that quickly.
Well, I'd be remiss if I picked Wichita East. I think people would want to know what's wrong with me, or they might be wanting to take me to Larned or something like that, But got to go with the Buffs. They've been averaging winning by 27 points over the last 5 years against them. I'm gonna say that they're gonna win somewhere around 21 to 28 points again.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Buffs as well. Pretty wide margin. I'm gonna go and just throw a number out there. I'm going to go with 28 to 10. I think that's the best. The Buffs defense is really going to rule the day for them, and they'll get the offense going as the game goes when they can get Peyton a little bit of momentum going forward.
And I'm going to throw out 35 to 14.
35 to 14. All right. The second game, another high school game, Holcomb and Cimarron. Those two schools have had a long history. What do you see from them?
Well, it's a scary game to try to pick because Cimarron's got so many of their starters back, and they're really talented 3A school. They've not fared very well against Holcomb, though, the last 2 or 3 years in the season opener. So, I'm still thinking Holcomb's going to win the game. I think maybe the margin might, close the gap a little bit because the game's at Cimarron. So I'm thinking it's going to be like 31 to 20 or something like that.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, I probably might have would have picked Cimarron just because Holcomb's replacing their quarterback. Maybe it takes them a little time to get going. But Cimarron loses their head coach just a couple weeks ago, Jason Stidham. He's out. They have an interim coach that was on the staff, but still that might take a little bit of momentum from them. So I think it's going to be a close game as well. I'm going to take Holcomb 21, Cimarron 14.
There we go.
Let's move up to the NJCAA level.
Well, let's do Scott City.
Oh yeah, that's right.
High. We've got one of our other biggies, and it's an interesting matchup because while we don't have Ulysses on our list this week for one of our pick 6, they play Liberal.
Yeah.
So that's a great West
GWAC,
versus GWAC versus WAC. So and Scott City hosts Hayes High, and so I think. Hayes High struggled a little bit last year. Randall Rath's first year, he'd been at Cimarron. Mm-hmm. He'd had a really good run at Oakley before he moved to Cimarron. He's a good coach, very successful through the years. But I think having to go to Scott City and play them at home, Jim Turner's first game, I see Scott City winning like 28 to 20.
Yeah, I'm probably right on the same line with you. I think that's probably a little bit too many points. I don't see Scott City giving up that many points. I'm probably going to go with 14 to 10, maybe 14-13, something like that. I'll stick with 14-10 just because I don't think that those two teams are going to score as many points as maybe they will down the road here.
Now we get your Bronkbusters and the Highland Scotties.
That's a big game.
One of my favorite nicknames.
Yeah, the Scotties, yes. That's a big game. Highland comes off a big win last week against number 8th ranked Dodge City. Again, Garden City beat Ellsworth, which was receiving votes in the NJCAA poll. So this is a very big game for both of them. It's kind of a litmus test for both of them to see where they are on the pecking order of the Jayhawk Conference. I'm going to go ahead and pick the Bronkbusters. I think it's going to be a really, really close game. I'm going to go Garden City 24, Highland 23. I think it's going to come down to a field goal at the end.
Well, we're in the ballpark. I was thinking Garden City 21 to 20.
Okay, there you go.
So we at least think it's going to be in the 20s. field goal's going to be the difference.
Yes, I think that's probably
Maybe an extra point too.
Maybe,
Who knows?
maybe, yeah. And Garden City Community College actually has a legit kicker this year. It looks like he made a field goal last week against Ellsworth, so maybe he makes the difference. We'll go to the NCAA level. We'll go
we get our two Division I in-state
schools. Now with
the
these
Wildcats and the Jayhawks.
These picks, we're going to go ahead and go with the spread. Kansas is playing Rhode Island. Usually it's not a dead giveaway that Kansas wins a game, but they are 29-point favorites against Rhode Island. It's a lot of points. What are you going with?
I don't know how you – I in my wildest dreams, I can't see them winning a game by 29 points. So I'm going to say they're going to struggle a little bit early. I think they'll catch some momentum towards the end of the second quarter and the second half, hopefully. And I'm going to say they're going to win the game 31-17.
Yeah, I did rock, paper, scissors with myself before making this pick because that's the same thing the QBs do.
Did Rock win out?
Rock won out. It's because that's the same thing KU QBs do to figure out reps, which might be a little bit of a problem for them. I'm going to go with the Jayhawks. I'm going to pick them 35, and I'm going to have Rhode Island with 21 points. So won't cover, but they do get the win. Finally, big game for Kansas State. They're 15-point underdogs on the road at Stanford, obviously a Pac-12 favorite. Many are saying Kansas State might have one of those magical years for Bill Snyder. Maybe this is it.
Well, they've got Jesse Ertz back at quarterback, and he got hurt on the very first play of the first quarter of the first game last year and missed the rest of the year. So, we'll never know exactly what that impact had, but he's obviously won and earned the starting job, and to do that, you've got to really impress Coach Snyder. And so I trust that their offense is going to be better than it was last year. But going on the road, out to California, West Coast, 2 time zone differences, I'd like to think that an upset might be in the realm of possibility. Always is, but I think Stanford's going to win 28 to 10.
28-10. So that is Stanford does cover at that point. I'm also going to have Stanford covering. My only question is Stanford does not have necessarily a rock solid quarterback at this point, but I'm going to pick Stanford 35-10. I think they're going to pull away as the game goes on.
Well, we've got our pick six, so pick six in football is an interception heading the other way. So who knows how we'll do whenever we get through Saturday.
Well, come back next week. We'll rehash those picks and we'll talk about next week's games as well.
Thanks for watching. We hope to hear from you soon.